Okay, we need to talk about the toilet just a little bit more, because I've been made aware that I have not spoken about all of the wonderful things enough in as much detail as would be expected. So we have these controls on the side, which, as you can see, we have some volume for a nice little song, but up here is where the fun happens. We've got all sorts of different bidet controls, and we thought this was particularly funny because it looked like a little bit of a bum, and this one was a very obvious cleansing of the bum. And these we have no idea, obviously, because well, they're not in English. Battery, though you notice that it's just printed. It's not actually a symbol that lights up and changes. Not sure what that one's about. This one has the sink on the top, so I've been told that actually it is a sink. So when you sit, aha, it basically will run a sink, and then that water is what will fill the toilet bowl. So you can wash your hands first, and then that water ends up being what fills the bowl next time. Very clever. The point is, the toilets are so comfortable with the heated seats and all of the buttons and the comforting music that it actually makes going to the loo enjoyable. You can imagine spending some time in here in a relaxed, comfortable state, even though actually this is a tiny, tiny little room. It's tiny, but it's rather nice. Good morning. Here we are again with our home-cooked Japanese country-style breakfast. It's very early in the morning. After eating Japanese country food for a couple days now, I'm realizing their food consists mostly of starch. There's not a lot of fresh fruit or veggies happening here. This morning we went to a fabric dyeing workshop. So we've been in a warehouse, beautiful warehouse space, and a bunch of the women showed us a bunch of different patterns that we could try.
Achieve this intricate window design, you have to do the hand stitching. That way if anything splashes.
And so a lot of us ended up taking the patterns and adapting them a little bit to make our own. They used all sorts of different simple materials to create the patterns. Some you would use marbles and elastic bands, some things you would fold in a certain way and then put wood over top of them and clamp them down. Others would use sewing, stitching to make patterns. So it's very much similar to paper snowflakes, when you fold up a piece of paper and then you cut different shapes and then you unfold it and it creates a geometrical pattern. So we had to choose our pattern, choose our shapes. I kind of combined a couple different methods, and then you wet the fabric and then you ink it, and so depending on the type of pattern they would tell us if we had to ink for 3 minutes or 2 minutes, and then you would take it out, dry it, and then you would put it back in again and do another 3 minutes or 2 minutes depending. And then it was sort of a magical moment when we took everything off and we saw what the pattern made in the end, and we've got some really, really cool final results. So this is an elementary school, Kabaho, where we are meeting a whole bunch of elementary school kids, and they're going to show us how to draw calligraphy, and then we are going to have a bit of an exchange.
My name is Tammy.
Tammy. Good.
Yeah.
My family name is Jack Murian.
We all introduced ourselves to the class, and we showed them our kanji names that we'd printed on wood the previous day. The kids were super cute and attentive, and they were very impressed with our kanji writing.
I'm from Argentina.
And here's my name in katakana.
We then paired up with a student. I sat with a very shy, quiet girl in the front. She kind of reminded me of myself at that age, which I think is why I chose to sit with her. She had me sit down in her tiny little seat, and she instructed me on how to ink my brush and paint the two kanji words which meant departure. She didn't speak any English, but we were able to communicate using hand gestures and with a little bit of help from a translator. After I painted mine, she sat down and she demonstrated as well the same departure words. I was really impressed by how well behaved the children were at the school. They were alert and focused and quiet. It was hugely eye-opening being there. It really helped me understand the Japanese culture a lot better, seeing these kids at the school. The methodical, rule-obeying way of living is deeply ingrained in them as children. Things like the school has no cleaning staff or janitors, so it's up to the kids to clean everything, which is probably why they don't make a huge mess, because they understand the consequences. This is also probably why I've been so impressed with how clean the whole country has been in general. They also serve each other at lunch. We were shown how they eat. Half the class dresses up in little chef outfits and serves the food to the other half of the class. My understanding is the food is provided by the school. The school was adamant that we had the same lunch experience as them, so they brought us some noodles and broth, and half the type campers served the other half. The few vegetarians, myself included, had some special food that we'd brought leftovers from last night. After lunch, we went out and played with the kids for recess. They had about 20 minutes to play. We chased the boys and taught a bunch of the girls how to play hopscotch. It was really cute. Outside, they were a little bit more wild and kid-like as well. And then suddenly, when the 20 minutes was up, the teachers played some music and the kids all stopped to stretch. Everybody just stopped and obeyed, no matter where they were on the playground. The whole thing was a wild experience. Oops, sorry. Got arrows everywhere. Oh my god, this is so funny.
Hi, what is this? Oh my god, what is that?
Where's the camera?
Cookie. Yummy.
Tengo 25 años.
She was in Mexico for 18 years and she's been in Japan for 25. Technique is called some word in Japanese that I didn't pick up, but it means chrysanthemum.
I can't decide which workshop has been my favorite so far. We're doing pottery this evening, making the journey from 2D letterforms to 3D. We have to create something inspired by the Japanese characters we've been learning. Our teacher is a Spanish woman who's been living in Japan for 26 years. She taught us all sorts of hand sculpting techniques. We are not using any machines. I'm doing a Dr. Seuss-inspired landscape here. From bird's eye view, it creates the geisha character I learned yesterday at the shrine, the character for love. But from the side, it has all sorts of interesting peaks and troughs. Love is such an intense, indescribable thing. It's powerful and outrageous, encouraging and burdening, full of mellow hills and dangerous cliffhangers. Cushions your fall and attacks you from strange angles. It's all in here. We are sitting on the deck overlooking a rice field, and I'm completely absorbed in the clay. So much so the sun sets, and they had to bring out lanterns for us to see, and I didn't even notice it got dark. I was enjoying myself so much they had to tear me away for dinner.
How is it? It's a cheap bottle of wine. Which is whatever. Oh, it tastes like
It almost just tastes like great Gatorade. When you first...
yeah.
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 Like, not Gatorade. What am I thinking of? Kool-Aid. No. Like Welch's grape juice.
Yes, it's got an initial hit of that, isn't it?
Adult Kool-Aid. Adult grape juice. Fresh veggies, finally! This is miso and mayo mix. Super tasty. For dinner tonight is soup with a side of soup. So, food. Food. Keith, this is for you. Bean soup. We have soup, which had a bunch of fish in it, but they picked it out.
Mexican soup. With salsa.
Which you slurp. Yeah, for me, there's seaweed, taro, which is like jelly, tofu, daikon, is that what it is? Daikon, which is this, and there's a hard-boiled egg, which I'm not going to pick up. So, yeah, there's salsa and parmesan, and
I could afford that for you.
something, some sort of vegetable, wedge. And then we have tiny little bowl of shredded something, cabbage and carrot, and what is this, like a frittata, which is really crumbly. It has chives in it. I love the sculpture so much that I'm coming back by myself at nighttime after dinner to do another round. I was set on making a mug for myself to have it work. It was really funny because when I decided to make it, I was set on having it be the perfect round shape for my hands to hold, so I could kind of cradle it like a soup bowl. And then as I started making it, I realized how hard curves were, and when I made the actual cup barrel, it ended up being really flat. So I went through the process in my head of saying, this is going to be perfect. It's going to be the perfect round shape for my hands, just perfect for my size. To, oh yeah, flat, nope, yep, flat's okay, flat's great, flat is just as good as round, it's going to be fine. It's quite funny. It's a lot harder than you think. But I really love it still. I gave it a little sweater with some buttons so it's warm and cozy for the winter time coming up. This is a lot harder to do after a couple glasses of wine. Once we're done with the sculpture, our teacher will glaze them and mail them to us. So I'm going to do mine in a matte blue. Some interesting things I've learned and discovered over the last few days, just in conversations that happen in between. we were asking some of the Japanese people about homelessness in Japan because the city itself feels so safe. It's very modern. It's very clean, as I've mentioned many times before. It's laid out like a grid. It's easy to wayfind. It's so welcoming. It feels like, even though it's a completely different culture to how I've been raised, I feel like it would be a fairly easy integration to move there and live there. But one of the things I was curious about is whether it's just a facade, what happens to the homeless people? Is there poverty? Where do they go? Why are we not seeing any of it? And I learned that it's quite hard to become homeless, first of all, because the system, you have to fall through many, many layers of the system. There's a lot of pride as well here, so it's quite shameful to become homeless. And if you do get to that stage, there's a community sort of off the beaten track, a little bit outside of the city, where they go and they take shelter. But we looked up online to see pictures of it, because even that is structured and organized. It's not like homelessness that I've seen in the cities that I've lived in. They created little communities, they created tents, they had, their own little community, organized community within them.
But I'm not having it and being like, shit, now I need it. So I was like, okay, this is not gonna work out. Like, let's just fuck it. And then he was like, yeah, okay, I understand it, whatever. Apparently, the American version. This one's good. Don't you love a good sparkler $10? This must be an American one too.